think we're all a lot younger then. So, welcome everyone, and Chris, thank you very much for volunteering to do the recording. So, first of all, let's take apologies for absence.
We've got apologies from Wendy Ryder, Peter Lanswood, Michael John Webb, Sudesh Rani, and Paula Brazier.
I've also seen Catherine. She's also having to self-isolate with current terminology, unfortunately. So, okay, so we've got enough. We're chorus. Can we note those apologies, please?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Declaration items. Declarations of interest and items in the agenda. Are there any requests for dispensation? Or right, that falls. Okay, thank you. Can we agree the minutes meeting held on the 7th of June, which have been circulated? Everyone happy with the minutes?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Sign those. Public open session. No members of the public. Stephen doesn't count for member of the public. Thank you to Stephen coming on. Chris, unless you have anything, you're okay? Right, okay, thank you, Chris. Right, financial matters, item 5, to approve bank reconciliations and income payment. It's circulated. Everyone happy with the figures? Reports? Yep.
Yes. Can I suggest, Chairman, that normally you'd sign these at the meeting or initial them, but given the quantity, I think it might be all right if you sit and initial it. So I think, can I suggest maybe I pass them into next week to myself, and then we can get back and pass them to Peter, so you can just initial as you want to do. Otherwise I think we've got a long night.
Okay, thank you. So 5.2 is receive the externally reported accounts for 2021 and a report from Mazars.
That was circulated. If you recall that we were asked last time to provide additional information, I suspected because we had the error with the precept, which increased our turnover and so on. And this time, of course, we're back to normal. But we did provide that extra information, and they've not made any more comments. So next year we'll just provide that extra information anyway. Simple enough to do that. Yeah.
Thank you. Item 5.3 is another donation from Mr. Gundle. Use Waving Green for the fair.
Yes, so the question has to be now, what are you going to do with it? So at the minute it's in the accounts under other receipts. It's for you to decide whether you put it towards something we do already on Waving Green, or you don't have to make that decision now. We can always move it to another heading, couldn't we?
Can we note that, and we'll think about what we're going to spend that money on? £200 kindly donated. It seemed to go well. So, great, thank you. Item sorry, I think. Sorry, when I turn my page, I get.
Yeah, that's 6.
Right, number 6. So, to agree the response proposed by the planning committee to the land at Graze Hill, Ravensden.
Basically, the development has already got outline permission, and this application, which consists of about 120 documents, just really details the type of houses which are going to be put on the site, and they range from 2, 3, 4 bedroom houses, some bungalows, some detached houses, some semi-detached, some terrace, and in one area are going to be 7 buildings with 7 flats. The actual main road going into the site was subject to a separate planning application, which is still being determined. So basically, we have no real objections to what is being proposed, but we are going to make 2 two comments. That is, in view of the climate change and the trend towards zero carbon, will the houses all have electric points supplied to them for the e-vehicles, and also will they use heat pumps rather than gas boilers, which are going to be phased out over the next few years? I must admit I didn't notice the answers to those two comments in any of the documents. But apart from that, no real problems really. The flood officer hasn't agreed with it. He doesn't think there's going to be any flooding problems. There's going to be two basins on the bottom of the site for excess water. And in terms of visual impact, which isn't really a planning concern, 90% of the houses are on the contour 45-metre line, which is the same as all the other houses on that side of Woodlands Park. And with the high edge between the two estates, it's not going to be visual apart from the actual roadway from the top of the hill. And in the previous planning application, we did say that the lights on the roundabout and on the main road coming in should be shielded, so there's no undue light pollution. There is a section 106 agreement. People are objecting in Woodlands Park to the fact that there are 3 exits into Woodlands Park from the estate. This is just for cycles and pedestrian. I can't visualise any cyclist, any pedestrian going up the hill to the roundabout to catch the bus into Bedford. Ideally, they will go through into Woodlands Park and catch the number 21 and 20 and 21 buses, which are only 50 metres from the entrance. And in terms of getting to schools, the shops, other facilities, again, people could walk and cycle down, come out onto the park, and then onto Westwood, where we get to bus stop shops and what have you from that direction. Obviously, we would like high sustainability from the development.
I can't recall, Steve, has the planning, through the planning process, have the catchment area schools been identified for?
So can you run that one again, Boss?
Have the catchment area schools been identified for that site? Have they confirmed which schools will be catchment?
Identified yet, no. The fact that they're going in will probably improve the situation of what it is at the moment. Because at the moment there's flooding. If this can improve that, so much better.
No, sorry, I'm talking catchment area for the schools.
Oh, sorry.
I'm not speaking loudly. Sorry. I'm so used to speaking to my microphone on my laptop, but I'm not projecting. No, it's about the children from that new estate. Normally, every area, it's obviously whether it's the lower school, primary or the secondary, will be a particular designated.
I've no idea.
Right, okay.
Just to add, I know there's been a lot of concern with Woodland Park residents about access to Woodlands Park. I noticed in the section 106 agreement that they are going to provide 4 CCTV cameras, one for each of the pedestrian entrances and one for the roadway, which will be regularly monitored, so there shouldn't be any security problems.
Can I add to that?
Questions for Peter?
Can I add to that? Yeah, there's 3 things. One is the entrances into Woodlands Park was actually an objection from the police, not just the residents of Woodlands Park.
I gather that, yes, the objections are from Peter Knowles, who is the security officer, the police. Unfortunately, he objects to almost every single development in the borough over the years.
That doesn't mean all the objections are.
If all developers did what he said, there would you know, there wouldn't be any movements anywhere in any of the new estate. As long as the CCTV cameras monitoring them, there shouldn't be any problems. If there are any problems, you'd be able to look at the access on the camera and see if there are any people doing anything.
So I think CCTV, a retrospective resolution, not a proactive one. And it is national guidelines that estates shouldn't be, the links between estates should be limited in order to prevent rat runs. And just because he objects to every planning application doesn't mean that all his objections are wrong.
No.
So
well, when you say rat runs, he only likes one vehicle entrance to a development.
No, sorry, I don't mean in terms of traffic. I mean in terms of people with ill intentions using the pedestrian and cycleways to escape and evade the police, which is, you know, we've seen stabbings in Woodlands Park area. We've seen drug dealing there. We've got people going around at night trying the car handles, and the police have been unable to stop that because whenever they come round, he disappears out of a different entrance. This is ignoring that is basically, I think, not putting the safety and well-being of the residents first.
Do you have a follow-up question for that, Mike?
There's a couple more things. One is, look, I might have missed something on the planning things, but that planning application, the profile of where the houses are completely different to the one that was put forward before. So the profile before was very much to the, if I'm looking at it from Woodlands Park, the profile was the houses were very much to the right-hand side, going up the hill, and the country park was on the left-hand side. The chunk at the top of the hill has now moved to be down neighbouring Woodlands Park, cutting off a good chunk of the country park, and the country park's been adjusted to go around the top. And look, like I said, I've only looked at these plans today, so I might have missed something in the previous planning application, but the profile of where the houses are is completely different from what the original planning application that was...
Well, that's the idea of this reserve planning application. It's only a preliminary draft, the first one, which has been given outline approval. I noticed that all the houses, 95% of the houses are on the same contour line as that part of Woodlands Park, so they're not going to be any higher than the existing ones in Woodlands Park, and with the high edge they should be fairly well screened.
I don't
There's
know
only the
how
odd few which will be on the 50-metre contour.
I don't know how far apart the contour lines are, but they're certainly higher where they're looking to dig at the moment. But the other thing is, and I don't know whether this is for a comment here or not, they've been starting work up there with the heavy machinery as early as 6:20. I've seen them. The position of it, in basically you can hear that right the way across the country park. So I go out to my gym in the mornings, and they've been frequently they're working from 7 o'clock onwards, and 6:20 was the earliest I've heard them. I'm not sure whether that's within the rules or not, but it certainly seems unsociable when they've got the alarms going off for vehicles moving around and heavy clanking, because it is heavy machinery up there at the moment. So I don't know whether that goes in there or not.
They usually, on developments, they usually set those sort of parameters, hours and so on.
Can you include that in your
It is
response?
what I was asking for, Chair. It's a normal thing to ask for.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, if you can include that, Peter, in response to hours of working, yeah. I mean, the point about, okay, so the revised layout, as Peter said, that's a fairly common occurrence, I think. Is there anything specific about that you're objecting to, or?
Well, the access to the Woodlands Park, I think, in alignment with the police recommendations. I mean, I don't care whether they object to everything or not. Actually, I think it's a valid concern given the history that we've had with some of the stuff that's gone on in the last few years.
Thank you. Anyone else got any questions about this item? Any comments on this item?
I hear what you're saying, Mike. The problem is we want to encourage people to be able to have walks and access to the countryside and things. It's a balance, isn't it?
It is.
And actually, sorry, have you finished, John?
Sorry, yeah.
So what I would say is exactly picking up on what Peter's point. The layout of this park, a lot of it was influenced by the same officer from the police. And so we have all these perimeter fences through which people have widened the gaps, they've unbolted fences, they've created their own walkways, their own, because it's the natural design lines. And the challenge we've got is that, I'm totally understanding your point about criminality, people using these things, but equally you've got 99.9% of people who are doing legitimate business, walking around, exercising, families, dogs, whatever, which is fantastic. And I guess my concern is around this idea of isolating different pockets of communities. And so
Which is exactly what the police the guidelines use, and he quotes them in his letter. It talks about isolating the communities in order to prevent exactly that.
I see isolating in a negative sense, from that point of view of legitimate, legal, valid, purposeful activities.
We had a fence put up when the estate was built that went between Brownie Pack and Grenadier, and it was up, and then they came and cut it with electric cutters, the people who lived on the Woodlands estate, because they wanted to get through, to get the bus and what have you. And in the end, it involved quite a lot of expense just putting in a proper path, because one had never been designed in, because it had become a desire line for people who lived on the estate.
And we had funding from both the borough councillors and the Brickhill Parish.
Yeah, we funded it, didn't we, Stephen? Yeah, that's right.
So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely 100% for anti-crime measures. It's just trying to
balance it out. I get what you're saying, John.
Right. So we have a recommendation. We've had some comments questions from Mike. Can we move to an agreement? Is that how we have, this is, the minute here is, or the item is to agree the response provided by the planning
I
council.
think what the planning committee did, obviously most of you weren't here, they were not objecting, they were simply identifying those issues about the houses being environmentally sustainable, or whatever we want to call it. So now we need to capture what else you want to put in. So are you objecting to it? Are you supporting, or are you not objecting but putting in comments?
These are reserved matters, aren't they? So it's not a refusal as such. It's an adaptation, possibly sending back to the drawing board if you have strong views on it.
I know that in the comments, I'm not the only person that's of that opinion, by the way. There are other residents that have commented along those lines.
what the borough councils feel.
Well, we lost when it was granted outline permission.
No, about this issue.
I think it's because it's on lower ground. My principal concern is with the height. As far as the security goes, I don't fully understand the police argument. I mean, I can see why there's a benefit to having a solid fence, but then we know the fence isn't solid. If I thought that fence stopped anybody, I'd have a strong view. But on the whole, it doesn't. I can understand the concerns because those who live on the edge of the estate are particularly vulnerable. They back onto the boundary, so the gardens are vulnerable. And the high hedge can be used for two purposes. It can be used to screen, it can be used to conceal. So I can understand the concerns, but I'm not sure it's possible to design it in the way that now proposed by Lincoln. So I can understand the residents' concerns, but I'm not sure there's anything one can seriously do about it, because otherwise you've got an estate that's truly viable. As I said, they're not going to walk up the hill, they'll find their own way across.
Yeah, I think people would create their own paths through, even if whatever is done, it's a natural. There's this thing about natural desire lines.
Well, as Charles said, they took machinery to cut open that fence because it was a regular path and a natural path. So long as the entrances are designed for natural paths, so long as they have barriers in to prevent motorcycles, etc. using it. And motorcycles are, small motorcycles are one of the hazards in this state at the moment. So we don't want those encouraged.
No.
So propagating to restrict that, which should, I think, should be part of the requirements.
Stuart.
I thought actually at the entrances where those paths are supposed to cut through the hedge, they would have CCTV cameras.
So that's what Peter's saying, that there are 4 CCTV cameras you mentioned, Peter?
Yes, yes.
So 1 for the road access and 3 for the pedestrian cycling access.
Can we confirm they can be linked to the borough system?
Shall I put that as a question?
Can it be confirmed that they're linked to the borough system and then maintained by the borough council ad infinitum?
The section 106 agreement signed with the borough's solicitor and the developer.
Yeah. Okay.
So shall I add that in as a comment, another one?
That we expect the CCTV to be operational.
And the hours of working,
Hours of working.
question that.
Yeah.
So hours of working, CCTV, the design of the houses, what else?
And use some of these. Propagates so that you can't be quite so motorcycles.
Restriction, not necessarily a gate, but a restriction.
It's a restriction, yeah, just make-
Of some form, appropriate restrictions to stop.
The offset barriers.
Yeah, that type of thing.
To do what?
To deter motorcyclists.
All right.
Quad
At the
bikes,
access point.
motorcyclists.
Okay. At the access, these are 3
On
access
the
points.
access in between there and the Woodlands Park.
The 3, isn't there?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's always a problem because of mobility scooters for the disabled
That's true.
and people taking their children to school in cargo trailers.
Yeah. And prams, push beds, whatever. That's
Yeah,
a family
that's the word used, yes.
Alistair.
Can I just chip in something? I'm just checking the borough's map. Some of those footpaths are footpaths, and I think we're setting a dangerous precedent if, as a parish council, we start saying we're going to cut footpaths, because the next thing you know is East West Rail that are just doing a footpath and public rights of way survey. They're going to say, oh, we can put our railway through here. We don't need to worry about public rights of way because your own council has just put some barricades across one that actually already exists anyway. So it's kind of,
Yeah.
you need to be careful about what precedent you're setting.
Yeah, I thought we were going to get away without talking about East West Rail.
Yeah, no, I just get
It's,
it. But it's
But
the
it's quite
same
right.
issue about if you've got a footpath.
yeah. They are public footpaths, as you say.
You're supposed to
So,
have a right
yeah.
of way on it, and if we
Whatever
start saying we
happens-
don't want it,
Yeah, I think whatever happens, there's no proposition to close the public footpaths.
no.
It's simply about the question, I think it's more about the question getting into the estate itself. Because you've got, in particular, I'm not sure which one, it's Saltcote and Meadfoot. One of those roads has got it's one of the design ones. It's one of the places we were looking initially at having a gate to go through. So I always got the two mixed up. But are we okay with what's been said? No, Mike's unhappiness about access. Is that okay? Can we move?
Yeah.
Got a submission? Thank you. We're going to move on to item 7. Parish Council received a grant of £2,500 many years ago from BPHA to spend on play equipment in Woodlands Park. We delayed it for ages because the estate had not been adopted by the Borough Council, but I feel this money is burning a hole in our pocket, our collective pocket, and I'm quite keen that we spend it, because BPHA are also keen that we spend it. So I'm going to suggest, I'm looking for support. Steve and I had a chat the other day about the possibility of the Ward Council for Woodlands Park also contributing towards something up there alongside the 2.5 from BPHA. And I've just mentioned to Stuart this evening, we also, I believe there is £1,000 that's in the BCA coffers. I will try and confirm
The
this.
Whitsuntree money.
Whitsuntree, that's the one.
Because we,
Yes.
as a parish council, couldn't apply for the grant, but
Yes.
the community centre could.
So they very kindly allowed me to apply on BCA's behalf for funding from the Whitson Tree charity. So that's in the Brickhill Community Association coffers. And if we basically collectively, put all that money together, we might be able to do something useful in one of the play areas up there. And one, something Steve and I talked about the other day, was the pig park, where the pigs are falling apart and are becoming dangerous.
A positive hazard.
Yeah, which is, I love the design, I love the idea of having something, different. But unfortunately, they're reaching the end of their lifespan. They've reached the end of their lifespan, and I think we need to something needs to be done about them.
Well, certainly the residents with children in and around that particular one.
Yeah.
Would welcome it being upgraded.
I think there's quite a few BPHA properties in that patch as well, so it would be an appropriate place to do something. So can I suggest that we...
Do we have costings yet?
We haven't, have we, Sue? But we certainly haven't got anything for a replacement of the pigs.
Well, the problem is, it's not ours,
I know.
it's borough.
I know.
So we'd have to go probably through Paul Pace, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
Don't think that'll be difficult.
No.
But if you're happy to look at something which is,
Okay.
equivalent, maybe new pigs, or other equivalent appropriate animals, I don't know, or just a simple play, whatever. Let's see what's doable, so we can try and, at least deliver that.
Are you looking for more wooden animals, or are you looking for springers or something different?
I think the animals are nice, personally.
Cost you a fortune.
Yeah.
That's the trouble, they may be very expensive.
Yeah.
To have some proper play equipment there is not necessarily appropriate, because certainly after hours you can get the wrong people in there.
Yeah.
And they're very close to houses.
Yeah.
Do they not sit on the pigs though?
They're less likely to.
Well, I know Mark likes the pigs, but I'm not sure children actually do.
I think they can take my weight.
Well, say, ask some parents who go past it, they seem to like it, but
Did
they're genuinely speaking on behalf of their children or not, I'm not sure.
I'll have to go and look. I haven't been to the pig park. I've been to the
What's your children?
whatever it is.
So can we just try and get some
I'll try and
options?
find
My kids are a different
Options and try
generation, so...
Sorry, Mike, can you speak through the chat? So, Mike, can you say again?
Oh, sorry, Stephen asked me what my view was. I said my kids are of a different generation, so to be fair, I should have probably asked around, but...
I've asked quite a lot of people in and around that area, and they're welcome.
Okay.
I've upgraded much the same, not necessarily precisely the same, but the same sort of thing.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
But I was just going to suggest, obviously, what is bought or purchased for the area is going to depend on how much money there is, because it's, I mean, knowing how much has been spent on the playground, you can buy a huge piece of 26,000 or...
You might find it's about...
so it depends on how much money we've actually got in total, so...
Yeah.
I wonder if it says on those who made it, because often with this wooden equipment, it often does say somewhere on there who made the thing. Because that'd be helpful, because we'd always go back to the company.
Or who originally installed it.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, I'll make some inquiries.
And I'll try and find the Whitson Tree email, Stuart, and I'll get that to you if I can find it, or see if we can
I
find it.
thought it was actually in the your accounts at one
I'm
stage.
sure it was, but
as an item,
Okay.
holding
we can
money.
try and find that. It would be a useful thing to do, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Find it and remind me, yeah.
Moving on to then to item 8, to consider and agree additional funding to complete the resurfacing works of the Mowsbury Walk play area. So the play area has been refurbished. We've got the new kit in there behind here, which looks good, and including some flooring, but it really needs to get it up to a proper standard. I would argue it needs more spending on it. So we had a few of us had a walk around some weeks ago, and I think we were in agreement that it does need a bit more doing. So, Sue, I think you've had some quotes in the past.
Well, we had 3 people quote for the work, the first phase, as it was called, which has been done, and one of them also quoted for the rest of it, and in total it was going to be about £22,000. It's the surface, it's very expensive. But I would have to get more quotes. I'd obviously have to go back to RPM who did the work that's in there already and get an idea from them. But they are big areas, that's why it's expensive.
Yeah.
The area under the big climbing frame has to be that big because of fall issues and distances that children can fall off it. And also the springers, they're quite spread out, there's quite a few of them. So there's not a lot you can do except cover most of the area.
Anyone got any questions on this? Any thoughts? We haven't budgeted for it, but I think we've had some positive feedback on what's been done, and I just think in order to try and do a proper job, you need to think about the extra, those extra bits. It's not frippery. It's trying to do it. It's trying to do it well and do a proper job. Yeah.
But we've also had the comment: when are you going to finish it? And I've made the point. Well, we've put in a set amount of money, and we've cut our pattern or our cloth according to what we've got available, and so yeah.
So do we need to propose that we look for some quotes?
Well, we get some quotes.
Work?
Yeah, we get some quotes and then agree maybe next time if it's suitable. How much we're willing to spend on that. Now, as I say, we haven't got anything budgeted for this, so we have to think about using our unallocated reserves, some of our unallocated reserves.
Well, I did circulate, I'm just looking amongst the pile, the reserves, our current reserves, i.e. what we had on the 1st of April and also what we now have, because we've sent back or paid back our NDP money, £8,425, and we've obviously spent the 24,000 that was in Mowsbury Walk. But there are other things there, aren't there? What is the capital expenditure £60,000 for?
Yeah.
I just wondered. I didn't know.
It's more of an opportunity. But if we're happy to do that, we have to come back with a more formal proposal. So we've got some costs and we understand what we get for that money. And we can see whether or not we're happy with it.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan. Let's see. Receive a report from the Borough Council. Move on to item 8. And half of the Borough Council present run out of the room.
Yeah.
Have we received anything from Stephen and Philippa?
I haven't seen anything, but...
Well, just a couple of things. Firstly, there's competition at award funds, because one of the things I've been told, I understand there's a demand for is a bench or benches, particularly on the bridle path, because there's very few of them. And they're very popular with people staggering on the middle of the house. So the pigs may have to fight the bench. Do some research to see which is preferred. With regards to general matters on the estate, yes, I think you may know, because I think Philip sent you an email earlier, so if you haven't had it. The position is that we've been chasing progress on the snagging list and getting very little response from the officers. So it's been a difficult period and it's holiday time and so on, but we're having very good feedback on that, and also on general ground maintenance because of the weeds and the need to control. So we're chasing both of those things at the moment, and we had hoped to be in a position to report tonight. We haven't had feedback.
I know Michael John Webb had planned to raise that, but he obviously can't be here tonight. The general point, I wasn't quite sure which specific area he was referring to in his comments, but yeah, thank you. Anything else, Stephen? Any questions for Stephen? Thank you very much, Stephen. Charlie, you've circulated your report.
Yeah.
Your report, main report.
You haven't said any questions.
Anything you want to add to it?
No, nothing particular.
Okay, thank you. In that case, any questions for Charlie? Okay. Not rushing through, but let's move on then. Thank you very much. Thanks for sending the report, Charlie.
No.
received an update on the run plan to agree next step to progress it. So we've got through an earlier stage, and that culminated in us returning the remaining funding. I have received a replacement or updated proposal from the consultant. I've not actually submitted an application for funding for it. I'd quite like to do that, and then have a bash at doing it this autumn, / early next year, subject to getting funding from central funds, i.e. not costing the parish council money. No, it's going to basically. I think there's value in trying to complete that process. I was happy to allow me to submit an application, and then again we'll be back in the rounds of looking for some volunteers to progress it. But it's going to be. I think we need to do it in a way that's. We're trying to do it in a way that's doesn't require too much work, if that's the right way of describing it, because it can. You can. I think. One can spend too long on these things. You can overcomplicate it. I don't know if Stephen, you've got views from your other parishes.
And all of them have underestimated how much work is involved.
Yeah.
It's extraordinarily complex and prolonged. The processes are drawn out, and several of them are now to the third team of people involved on the committee, simply because the others have got tired of it.
I think the key thing to it is asking the right questions in the first place. So it's trying to not overcomplicate. Well, from my perspective, trying to avoid overcomplicating it.
I think it's possibly less of an issue for Brickhill than say Turvey, one of mine, or the small villages where there are big issues about where the sites that have been proposed in their plans are. Milton Ernest have got the same issues with the groups of residents on the case. As I said, Turvey are, so I think Brickhill may not have as many issues because you've not got those areas of...
You've not been asked to identify X number of houses or sites for it.
Yeah.
Is that okay if I submit an application and we'll try and take it forward? I believe it has to be completed this financial year, but I think the thing's coming to an end, if I recall. Okay, thank you. So we're going to move on, if I may, to item number 11. This is the main item on the agenda, really. This is the switch on the Christmas lights. And who gets to dress up as Father Christmas?
Well, hopefully we can... Well, what we've done, obviously, in the past, we were gradually making this a bit more of an event each time. First of all, we got the lights, didn't we? Then we got somebody dressed up as Father Christmas. Then we acquired a couple of lights, so people could see where they were walking. It's pitch black around there, nobody knows where they're travelling. And then we managed to get the lions, didn't we, the Rotary people. They come on sleigh. Then we've had the children involved from school. So we could make provisional feelers, put feelers out to the schools, feelers out to the Lions, and see if we'll be able, if they're planning to do Father Christmas. None of it involves us with massively big expenditure. Schools are probably practising things, we'll start practising carols anytime soon, so I don't think we're putting them out in asking them if they'd be interested. We will be buying more lights as we do every year to go on the tree, because every year there are lights go or people cut the wires or whatever. So if all else fails, we just simply put the lights on the tree. I will go out to the borough and ask if they're prepared to put the lights on the tree. Hopefully they will.
Have you managed to get the lights back yet, Sue?
No, that's my other joy. They're
So
still
the
going
borough
lights.
took them down and they're back
And they
in
took them with them.
Barker's Lane somewhere.
Well, I've offered to go down anywhere and pick them up, and chasing Simon, Giorgio, and I keep chasing them saying, the lights, can we have them back?
Why do you want them back?
Well, because we don't trust them not to put them on another tree.
Oh, they'll come back.
Ooh.
They've got all my lights as well from the shops, because Wendy and I bought them for Brickhill Drive shops, neighbour drive shops.
I mean, what I think has happened, or does sometimes happen, is there's a pool of lights for some of the Christmas trees. I think Kempston Town are in there, Brom are in there.
Yeah.
And depending on the order in which the lights go on the tree, and who's putting them on, you find, you know, it's like decorating your own tree, isn't it? You can't quite judge the number of lights, and then you suddenly might find you've got not enough. Our lights are different to the ones that Kempston Town and Bromham have, so we quite like keeping them in the office, so I do, so that I can then know where they are, because they're £3,000 or £4,000 worth of lights.
I think we should get them back, really. Yeah, I think.
A bit nice too.
I don't know whether we can ask Charlie to help.
Well, I've got some new things to put them in.
Yeah.
They were putting some, you know, buildings.
So if you want to get them back, I'll send an email and try and encourage them to give them back.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to go and get them wherever they are.
I'll copy you into an email now, Sue.
Lovely.
So yeah, the bigger question is, so last year we just switched them on and there was no event because obviously the COVID restrictions. So the question is for this year, are we, you know, what are we going to do? Are we happy to have some sort of, depending on what situation it's going to be in the autumn or in the sort of Christmas, you know, are we okay to go ahead and start, let's plan to have something and we'll try and do it in a appropriate way that's, you know, in a safe fashion if we can. Is everyone happy for us to do that?
Yeah, I think so.
I absolutely agree. If we don't do anything and then at the time restrictions aren't in place and then we're too late and the schools won't be able to get people. If you start putting your feelers out now, Sue, then I think, what is the date of it? Have you got a date?
Well, we used to try and make sure we're not clashing with somebody else's. So we don't, because otherwise if we try and get the Rotary club round, they obviously got to Kempston Town, somewhere else, and if we don't clash, we don't want to clash, otherwise
do we have a traditional date when the shop lights go on, when the tree lights go on?
I think we just set ours around, I think we went for about the 2nd of December last time. I've got a feeling, if I look back through the emails, Kempston Town are always a set date in December.
Right.
And so, obviously, we want to try and make sure we don't clash with that. If we want to get Father Christmas and his sleigh.
Yes. Are we okay to then kick those plans off? And obviously, if we have to adjust them later, we can do that. But, Charlie.
Can I just check? You definitely want the lights brought here?
Well, I'm quite happy to get them.
Oh, well, I'm sure they'll bring them for you. But you definitely want that because they're going to have to come and collect them then to put them on the tree, aren't they?
Yeah, well, I usually arrange to meet up and I take them over.
Fine.
I just think, you know, I do like to know where £3,000 worth of things are.
Is it better for Sue to go and get them? Because obviously the question will need to see here.
I'm quite happy.
I think they're in a box in the harbour centre, but I'll find out for you.
Yeah, just find out. If they are safely, put to one side, we're okay.
Okay. Mine are in a box in the harbour centre.
Okay. So, thank you. Anything else on the Christmas tree lights and waving green item? Are we okay to move on? Thank you. Item 12, consider and agree action re recording and transmission of future parish council meetings. And obviously we've got Chris here tonight, which is fantastic. Appreciate that. And do you want to add, Sue, do you want to talk to this item?
Well, I was going to almost ask Chris for a bit of advice here because we did hope that we were going to be able to record live, didn't we? To have a live transmission. We've not been able to. We weren't able to do that a while ago because the passwords and things that Simon passed me didn't work for me to do it. That was my plan. So we've had a bit of an issue tonight in that regard. So Chris is going to upload this. It's not live, is it? It's going to upload it.
No, that's correct. So I wasn't able to sort out the live stream with YouTube, but it is something I'll contact them about this week and try and resolve for the next meeting if you wish.
And I think it's all, thank you, Chris. It's worth saying that last time we tried to sort of work out how we could operate in a way that still enabled, we had a bit of a virtual thing and a physical meeting back in June, if I remember the correct month, and it didn't work particularly well, did it? I don't think our last formal meeting, when a few of us were in the render next door. We have some options. We can have live streaming. That's legitimate, that's permissible, legally permissible. The challenge we have still is that we can't have councillors participating in a meeting who are remote under the laws, as I understand it.
When you say participate, does that mean they're not allowed to speak, they're not allowed to listen, they're not allowed to vote, or...?
They can listen,
Yeah.
I don't think they should formally be speaking in
So
the
you
meeting.
can't vote. What you can't do is vote.
No,
You
yeah.
have to be present at the meeting
Yeah.
to vote. So that even applies where people often say, can I send you what I would vote if I was there?
Mhm.
And I always say, well, no, because that's not how it operates. You must be here.
So could they speak?
I don't think there's a problem with speaking. That's no different than a member of the public speaking, is it?
But members of the public would not be speaking during the items on the agenda. They'd be speaking in the public open session, and then, so it's a bit messy, frankly.
I don't think it's ever been an issue that we've looked at, or any parishes
No.
have, because until COVID, it's never been an issue. Nobody ever thought of Zoom meetings or hybrid meetings.
The thing, all I'm thinking is, in this day and age, we should try and accommodate it, because especially, you look at what's happened to Catherine Sudesh this week.
Yeah.
We're going to be going into a winter where there's likely to be a spike in cases, and they're at home because they're isolating. One of them's got COVID, one of them's waiting for a test result. That's likely to happen more than once.
Right.
I would imagine this is going to impact on parish councils across the whole country, where attendance is going to be up and down, as Mike rightly says, according to illness and people's circumstances. So is there somewhere too that you can approach in terms of the clerks? What advice is being given to the National Clerk Association?
Well, I suspect it depends where you hold your meetings, doesn't it?
Oh, right.
I guess. I suspect if you think about the Borough Council, they'll probably have a big screen on there, won't they, somewhere that is linked up and you can all be seen and take part. Here, we're going to be in a position where, quite honestly, everybody would need to bring in their laptop, wouldn't they, with a webcam on it, for a start. And then also, the problem always with that is, as we found when you all got together in Red Room, you're talking to the group of people. Whereas when you're on Zoom, you talk to the laptop, don't you? So, we looked at that, and I could see Alistair was talking, and everybody was talking to the people on sort of almost dodging around the laptop to speak to the person. And so when you watched it, it looked very odd. So unless we can come up with something like that, I'm not sure how easily we'd do it, because that's not something easy for in here, is it?
No, with the feedback that you get from the voices coming through as well through people's machines, we know the noise.
That's the problem in somewhere like, and you get an echo, don't you, as we've got now. I suspect
So apart from this, you had one, like you say, like a larger screen, and that had its own mic, its own sound system to transmit the sound from it. And then only have one mic open in the room to avoid that problem with feedback. It's not super straightforward.
And also, obviously, if members of the public are actually present, I don't know that, I'm not sure how that would work. They'd have to have laptops, wouldn't they, unless we did have somehow a very big screen. I don't know, we'd have to look at it. Most parishes seem to just be going back, well, certainly all mine are, the other 5 I cover, they're back to just meetings as we are. In fact, not YouTube either, just back to meetings.
Until the law changes, as it has to be at the real meetings.
I think so.
There's present participation.
Yeah.
Good. There are those options we can legally have, i.e. the public being remote, but then we get into the technical challenges.
And Steve, we would like to it's just the voting that's the issue.
Well,
Council can't tune in more from this side.
Okay. So if we can try and crack the first thing, which is essentially what Chris is very kindly helping with, and the live streaming bit, we could get that restarted, which would be great. And then let's see, maybe it's a point that could be raised by BATBC.
Well, there is something coming up. Is there not an AGM coming up?
There is an AGM coming
in
up.
October. So that's something maybe to raise with them.
Yeah, we could write to them about that. And Alistair, maybe if you want to raise it directly through the committee.
Well, I certainly can. I must admit, there's been a good bit of dialogue from the ATPC about this whole issue, which you're right, does affect every parish council. and the issue of what is a legal parish council meeting and what is not, and what can you add on to a legal meeting to make it more accessible. There's a couple of different issues there. And I know that there's been a lot of debate about it, and to be quite honest, I'm not exactly sure what the outcome was, other than your basic parish council meeting is a physical meeting in a room somewhere, and that's it. That's just, legally, I think that's all it is. And anything else you put on top of that doesn't make it any more legal, or you could make it less legal depending on how you voted for it. I mean, frankly, most of the issues on the agenda today are relatively uncontroversial, and if someone who is not here had put in a couple of comments about a couple of issues, that could be reflected as a comment, surely, couldn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't.
But yes, anyone who's not present can send in their comments.
Yeah.
And we'll convey it to everybody, in a way that circulates emails to everyone. But what we can't do is use their vote in favour or against something.
No, but we don't generally vote.
Well, we're trying.
We're
trying to achieve a bit of consensus if we can. So,
unless, if Mike can think of a way that we could do it, and you can suggest it, that'd be fine.
Well, I can think of a way that can do it, but it would involve spending some money on, and I'm sure Mark will be able to tell you that a big screen with a video conferencing camera and mic, you're probably talking a few grand, and that's, but is it worth that investment? Probably not.
But also, you've got to remember, if we're here, this is used for nursery or preschool, isn't it? It's used for various other people.
Mm-hmm.
It's tricky.
It's securing it.
Yeah, and I don't know, yoga and all sorts of stuff coming here. Not that they're going to wreck it, but
Is St Mark's considering,
we had an executive meeting, I think, recently down at the Corn Exchange, and I think the bill was, our total bill which was a lot of money.
But have you considered
a lot more?
Are you considering any form of audiovisual equipment here that would be used by your hirers?
No.
Oh, that's a shame.
No. Okay.
I suspect that as every community centre across the land, nobody knows quite how many people are going to be coming back and how many groups. And
we have to abide by the law, and if the law tells us that we've got to provide some kind of equipment, then that's what we have to do, whether we like it or not. Because these, as Karen says, parish councils across the country face this issue, and they'll tell us what we have to do and what is lawful and what isn't.
Many parish councils meet in village halls where there is no internet.
Yeah.
So, I think Woodington's case in point, so,
Yeah. I'm sure we'll be too.
Okay, so for the moment though, immediate priority is trying to sort out on the YouTube account. If anyone has any other ideas about how we can try and do some things in a cost-effective way, come forward, but otherwise we're back to how we've been before.
Can I just clarify then, at the moment, I think there's slightly two separate things. One of them is a video, which this evening's is going to be packaged up and put on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
After the event.
Mm-hmm.
So we know we can do that.
Yeah.
I think we can do that, or Chris can do it.
Yeah.
The next phase then, which I'm not entirely sure whether this makes it any better or not, is just to have that as a live feed that goes to YouTube, but with no interaction from anybody.
Yeah.
It's just this is what's happening. If you want to look in, you can do.
It's more immediate.
Yeah. But then the next phase is some sort of interactivity, and we don't think we can do interactive with councillors, but whether we want to do interactive with members of the public in a public open session.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, thank you. Should we move on to item 13, correspondence list?
Yeah, I just circulated. Just going through it, there was a petition from Rhineland Way residents, and I gave a copy, passed a copy on to Charlie. This is about lack of attention to the maintenance of the highway and footpath in Rhineland Way, so I don't know if you're going to make contact with the man concerned, or... I did try and contact him by email, but it just rejects the email. I don't know.
If I'm asked to do so, I certainly will, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to.
I did, I popped it through the door, I think, yeah. Did you get it?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
I did.
okay.
Thank you. We used to have a recommendation from the parish about the roads which we thought were quite bad in the area, which we wanted to be put forward, and Peter was very helpful in that. I don't remember Peter. I did go and have a look at Rhineland. It's probably not the worst in the. It'd be interesting to get a parish council overview, if you know what I mean.
Well, I mean,
Is that an action then? Do we need to go and...
yeah, I mean, is that a thing you need to have every year then, Charlie, by a certain date?
Well, I think it's helpful for the parish council to draw attention to roads in the parish which we believe to be in need of attention.
Right.
And for the council to be aware that the parish is pushing for that. I mean, this is what parishes across the borough do, isn't it?
Well, you've got more roads than most.
We have got a lot more roads than
Most
most.
of my parents do an annual walk around with often as an officer, a borough officer, so they can identify the areas that need doing.
I mean, I've got the ones that I think about, but it'd be helpful to have, a general
So
view.
you have an agenda item next time. People can do a bit of a review in their areas, see what they think are, suitable for priority, and then we can discuss it in our October meeting. Is that okay?
Yeah. It's a sad fact that when you research a road such as we did with Tyne Crescent or something like that, not Tyne, Avon Drive, you're talking about $250,000. It's a lot of money. So there's a limit to what can be done even with a lot of money being spent.
Okay, thank you. Sue?
Well, the only other things really were a couple of traffic regulation orders for Kennet Rise. This is in relation to parking restrictions at times of days and going to the school. And the other one is Ruxmead, CW Yellow Lines, and I did circulate information about that, so you've seen it. And then beyond that, you've got some planning workshops to do with the local plan, which I did circulate, and I think did Peter volunteer to go? Someone said they were going, and I forwarded the information on. Maybe not you, somebody then. And we had an email thanking us for the condition of working green, so it's quite nice to see people think it looks fine, we're doing a good job there. Then you're on to CPRE, aren't you, and seeing their initial response and their full response to the local plan that I sent out as well. And then really, most of the rest of it is just bits and pieces, really. Provision of electric charging points, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Andrew Pridmore, whether there were areas within the parish that could be proposed. Isn't that I think what he was asking us, or asking you?
Can we discuss that CPRE response? Because something did raise my interest in that. And that was about the proportion. So they highlight that there's quite a proportion of the requirement for the area being put upon Bedford Borough of the housing requirement, I should say, between now and 2050. And when you look at the Oxford's Cambridge Arc in general, it's 4.7% of the landmass and 5.7% of the population of the UK. But the housing increase between now and 2050 is just over a third of the required for the whole of the UK. So that's proportionally much higher. And then Bedford's taking a higher proportion of that high proportion. It would seem that we're getting the poor end of the stick. But I don't know what to do about it, or how to comment, or how we can push back on it, or what.
Well, my take on it, if I may, Charlie can correct me. I'm not at work. I'm only saying things that people correct me when I'm wrong. My take on it is that these are sort of centrally imposed numbers, which government have come up with in their infinite wisdom, and then it's then down to the local council. If the councils don't deliver the number of units with permission, then it's an open if the developers just come along, it's free for all.
So the council can't object to that.
So that goes back to the basics of what are the numbers that the government is imposing upon.
My advice would be to write to the minister. I mean, write to your MP, write to the minister, and say that you think that it's too heavy. I think Bedford is penalised by providing housing. You know, we do well to meet our targets, and it seems as if you do well, you get penalised for that. It's a difficult balance, isn't it? Because there's I think 1,000 people on the housing list at the moment, and people want housing. A little while ago, we were debating whether or not, we as a parish council were in favour of the woodlands being built. I don't know, some of you remember those conversations. They didn't want the woodlands to stay, and then there's another housing, and I've just objected to Freeman's Common, where there were more plans to build housing. So it's a difficult balance between finding homes for people. I mean, I'm right, I've got a home to live in, but I want homes for my grandchildren, children, what have you. So it's, I do think that Bedford's been asked to do too much. I do think it's too high, but the council isn't able to change that, because as Mark says, you end up having a free-for-all. The developers come in, and you end up with what you do not want. So it's better to have it properly regulated than to have a free-for-all.
Yeah, we have to go with the NPPF figure, but Charles is right. The way the algorithm or formula works is the more betting you've done in the past, the more betting you have to do in the future.
That's right.
Ludicrous. Which is why we are being loaded in this section of the UK. It's a perverse formula. And it's under review again. I'm not in time to say this since putting this number into the local plan.
Yeah. And I think coming back to it, if I'm just jumping in here, if I recall correctly, I think some of the Graze Hill development happened because there were some changes in the again, it's all about natural regulations, and any plan application is always reviewed in the light of what applies at that time. And I think there was a bit of a tweak in the government rules, and suddenly the developer was able to sort of make a case for that being built upon, even though it hadn't been originally in the plan that we had last time. It's a complicated issue, and I appreciate that. The finger is always pointed at the borough council, but I think they are they're drawn the short straw in this because they don't have control over it.
The damage will be caused in the medium term by ignoring the government guidelines, the government requirements. The NPPF figure is much greater than going with it. Going with it means you can plan when stuff goes.
Yeah.
Don't go with it, then the developers decide where it goes.
That's it.
Exactly right.
Did that, and not Mike, I don't know if that addressed the points you were going to
Look, I'm every day's a school day for me in this at the moment, so I'm learning as we go along.
Yeah. It seems unfair, doesn't it, that you get told. It was like you make a valid point, right? There's 1,000 people on the housing list. But I'm sure there's 1,000 people on the housing list in Sunderland. In fact, I know there is. And but they're not getting the same level of housing requirements pushed upon them. It just seems nuts. So.
And we've seen it already. I mean, obviously, nationally, we've seen it again. If you look at what happened down in Buckinghamshire, where that last by-election was, Cheshire Amish by-election. A lot of that was related to housing, and unfortunately, people want to live in nice places.
So I can just say the 1,000 on the housing register. The problem is that the housing we're required to put in is designed for people coming into the area. It's not designed and won't fit those on the housing register. It's such a small proportion because the developers control what goes on their site up to a point.
Tough one.
Okay. Obviously, I'm not going to mention Mr. Thatcher and what she did to the council housing.
The CPRE document itself, it takes a bit of reading. That makes it clear that it does the figures showing the expected immigration into the area from other parts of the UK, which this is designed to cater for. So it's not designed for local needs, it's designed to...
And it's a very difficult area. We as parish council have got no control over it at all. Whatever comments we make, obviously appreciate the local plan comments due back by the end of today. Tomorrow. Sorry, tomorrow.
Parish councils have a dispensation if they ask for it.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay. But the whole question about where does that housing go is obviously an important question. But fundamentally, it's going to have to go somewhere. And do you do what's been suggested, which is a few larger developments to try and soak up most of that provision, or do you do? If you don't do that, you end up having to put a lot of smaller developments affecting pretty much every village around the area. I suspect. I mean, I know Stephen's you've got views about Stewart, haven't you? What more can be done down there?
I'm glad to say I don't pursue it.
But you have views about, you thought the former brickwork sites.
Oh yeah, in terms of styles of development, is it better to have it in one place because that's actually the green option, or is it better to, or do we have to dot it around the villages, which is what we're doing, which is the least green option, even on our own sustainability analysis.
Yeah, I think, to be fair, the development we're trying to do is, sorry.
No, it's not.
So, to be fair, the development we're trying to do is brownfield sites, and the amount of housing that's being put just in the town centre is huge. And the desire is absolutely not to just obliterate our villages with little bits of housing here, there and everywhere. Or indeed to coalesce areas like Brickhill with Ravensden and the same with Reynolds being consumed by the urban area. I mean, we want to try and make sure that doesn't happen.
Okay, so can we okay to then move on from? Right, yeah. Thank you. So back on the correspondence, we have got a notification of the Oxford Cambridge ARC spatial framework. It's quite an interesting document if you want to spend a bit of time learning and reading. A spatial document, Peter? Yeah. For the ARC that's come through from BATPC, there's a link to that. That's quite well against work.
Absolutely, in detail, no.
And we've got the AGM on the 28th of October, and normally we're allowed to send 2 or 3, delegates. If anybody's free, wants to go to wherever that meeting's taking place. Henlow, I think, yeah. It's a useful event. There's a network meeting on the 4th of November, Town and Parish Council Network, which again, all of our councillors are warmly invited to attend. That's at the Borough Hall normally. I don't know if it is a virtual meeting this year, or is it this time or physical. But it's worth, again, if you've got free that evening, attending that meeting. It's good. Normally it's an opportunity to raise issues with the borough. Often there's the opportunity to talk to different departments within the Borough Council who are present at these sessions. So please do attend if you can. And the letter from Andrew Pridmore about charging points, can we have that again as a item on the agenda next time, Sue? I don't think it was a date when he needed a response back.
No, but we really do need people to suggest places where they'd like electric charging points to go, because the parishes have been not particularly forthcoming in suggesting locations, and we really do need some. There's lots going into the urban areas, but we need some for the parishes. And so, if you can think of somewhere in Brickhill where people don't have access to driveways, where they value electric charging points, then and where there is space to put them, that's really important.
So do we know what type of chargers it would be? Would it be the high, the quick chargers, or the standard ones?
The ones that are going in a mixture of both, Mike.
Okay.
I've asked them to look at the car park off Cleat Hill in Mowsbury to see whether that might be. But often it depends upon what electricity is available to do them. We've just completed the electrification of the Riverside car park, downtown.
Mm-hmm.
But it needed a power station to be put in separately because the electrics just don't work. So it's a lot of, depending on what the capacity is. BP Chargemaster are doing it, Connected Care are doing it, and BP Chargemaster tend to be the fast chargers, but they've gone round looking at different locations. They just can't do it because the electrics won't support it, unless you put in huge cost.
And or somebody that will invest in it. So are we funding? The Bedford Borough funding those?
Yeah, the Bedford Borough Council is putting funding into it, and it's attracting as many grants as it can. But there's not a massive amount of money out there as you might expect.
Well, there's some. I'll talk to you about it offline. But there's some private funding available, which they take a return and you go through the state aid implications. And I understand more about that than I want to. But but look, it might be worth looking at something like that.
By all means, send it to me. Copy in Andrew Pridmore, Andrew.Pridmore, because he's looking after the
he's dealing with lots of, I mean, companies are emailing in all the time saying they want to be dealt with, and some of them actually won't get through the council's procurement process because they just haven't got the proper processes in place. But he will certainly look at it and see what can be done.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the correspondence?
Sorry. I mean, I put in a reply to that email about electric charging points, and so did Michael. So where do we go with that input? Because it seems to me that we kind of, now we're like, it's almost like it's come back as a new issue, right? I mean, we're going back over some of the same things again. You know, I feel that it was a waste of time applying to that initial email because nobody's even ever looked at it, and neither from Michael's point of view. Michael does have practical experience, he has an electric vehicle, so, you know, we've chipped in some stuff. How do we get that condensed into something that actually matters?
Well, first of all, Michael, so we should have had it, I think we probably should have included it as an agenda item to formally agree our submission, if that's
Right.
That's what
So are we going to do that next time round? And if so, how do we get to that point before the next meeting where we come up with something that says, right, here.
So we can take on board.
Who's going to do that?
We can include the comments being received so far. If anyone else has any comments, ideas for where they can be put, they can be circulated in advance of the meeting. And then at the meeting, we'll try and boil it down to how many we're after for Brickhill? Is it?
As many locations as we can find, because there might not be possible for you.
So we can just give a list then to the borough.
I mean, one of the things that people might want to think about is that for the slower charges, it implies people parking overnight, so residents parking overnight. And for the faster ones, it might be, as Charlie suggested, at the golf course, where you've got 2 or 3 hours to play around with golf, you can charge the thing up if it's fast enough. So it is a bit horses for courses. It's not the same as just calling into a filling station and filling up in 5 minutes and driving off again.
Just so I'm just looking at Andrew's email now, there isn't a date for a response. He says they'll come and do site visits when we send the suggestions in.
I got your email, Alistair, and I think that all those the locations that you mentioned will be looked after. By all means, send an email through yourself, Alistair, to Andrew, and make any suggestions, because he'll send the companies out there looking at them as soon as you do. There's no need to wait.
Right, okay, that's why I come. When something like that comes through, do we then go through the council, or do we just go straight back to Andrew?
I think if you've got a location you think might work, just send it in. Okay. Just send it in.
So I see the difficulty, because in a sense we get the emails are coming through, Sue's sending them on, as they arrive. But in a way, our meetings is when we, as a council, should be agreeing stuff. We don't have a proper mechanism for agreeing things outside of our meeting. But sure, in that case you can obviously contact them directly. But I think
maybe that's the thing, is whether the email, whatever it is that comes in, requires a formal reply from the parish council, or whether it's just councillors as interested residents should say, oh, I think this, or I should think, and then you just do that independently.
Well, no electric charging points will be put in unless this parish council agrees them,
right?
Because they're controversial.
Okay.
But if 20 locations are put in, you might find that only a few of them, once they've been looked at, actually qualify for a point. So it's worth just putting them in as soon as you can think of someone that you think is appropriate. But bear in mind, it's got to cater for that on-street charging, because people don't have driveways. And it's got to be somewhere where you don't necessarily want to deprive ordinary people of parking who normally park there. And that's why they become very controversial, because you're pushing car parking spaces away from folks.
Is that okay? Yeah, thank you. So that's the last item on the agenda. Outstanding matters. Apologies, outstanding matters. So this is.
Well, there's only really about 3, I think, that arose. Speed cameras. I know I see quite a few emails from residents saying, when are they coming? And I've put on there the latest I got from Alan Burles on the 13th of August. And he says we're waiting the final outcome of high-level discussion between the borough and police for the entire suite, because I appreciate there are cameras going in now on this particular project across lots of parishes, not just ours, isn't it? So I don't know what we're up to, when we're likely to get an update or what.
I'd expect it by the next meeting.
Okay. Well, I'll leave it on this agenda until we see something on the back burner.
The problem is that there are 90 requests currently for average speed cameras, and the police haven't got the capacity to just put them everywhere, even if we could afford it. So there are discussions going on to determine, what level of enforcement the police can do.
On the subject of speed, so I'll just chip in that the signs have been put in one on Waverley Avenue or one on Avon Drive have really just confirmed the fact that there are people that are deliberately and willfully exceeding the speed limit by anything up to, I've seen 62 miles an hour was the fastest one I've seen on Waverley Avenue. And, people are making a concerted effort to drive at that speed. They're not doing it accidentally, they're absolutely trying to do it. So it's just highlighting the fact that we've got a real problem, a very serious problem, I think.
Thanks, Councillor. So that's speed cameras.
Alistair's asked for the freight strategy document to go on to the next meeting.
Yeah.
That's fine. It's a business about police. Every time I always give them dates in advance to the end of the year, and they always come back and say, we can't come to this meeting, but if you give us the dates with a time to give us time to plan something, then we might be able to. So I don't know what the answer with that one is, except to keep sending them the list as far as I can into the future. I did go on Waveney Green and a resident said to me, who lives in Avon Drive opposite it, she reckons that there are groups of youths gathered on those rocks and the playground in the evening, and she thinks there's drug issues going on. So I was going to say to Alistair to keep his eye open, see what he sees from your house. But also I've mentioned that to the police, to Inspector Boyd, who's the latest person, I think, unless it's changed, that's covering us. And I have asked if Dave Britton, who does litter picking, if there's any issue, if he ever finds any evidence of anything that he's picking up when he's around that area. He hasn't come back. I'm sure he would have said something if he had.
Okay.
I'm not sure what else we can do. We can contact CCTV, I think, maybe, because we've got a CCTV camera. Perhaps we contact CCTV control and say, could we occasionally have a look in the evening if we can see anything going on, perhaps. That's it, really.
I think the only thing about the police is, if I was in the police, I wouldn't come to the parish council meeting either, frankly. I might come to a specific meeting to talk about specific things that people want to raise and say, okay, we used to have a priority setting session or something at some stage, and we don't seem to have that anymore. So I think if you want to get the police here, it needs to be a specific police meeting, and to do that, you need to have specific things that you want to talk about. Maybe my opinion, to just get them along to a meeting like this, God help us, it's bad enough.
They wouldn't have to be here for the entire meeting. If they came, they could do their bit and go.
Yeah, but
and you're right, they used to have these priority set meetings which covered the area. The one for here covered Brickhill, Harper and Paris. That was the most recent incarnation of their way of operating. That was involving the public, not just and councillors,
Well, why don't we make it public?
Sorry.
Why don't we invite the public and say it's an opportunity to engage with police? It was done before, wasn't it?
They used to, unfortunately, the police became very unreliable in terms of turning up for events. Okay. Yeah. So we used to have a community safety forum in Brickhill. They used to commit to coming on, they came to it, and it was all fine. And then, with their staffing pressures, with their change of operation, probably change of management, that became less of a priority, and they all disappeared. So now it's very difficult. They don't seem to be. We can't schedule things because in the past we've tried to do that, and they're going to come and then haven't.
To be fair, Mark, the police do have a session with it, not in the parish council meeting, but we do have a meeting with the police, which has just been stopped because of COVID. But they come and they meet with all the residents, and it covers, as you say, Mark, Brickhill, Harper and the Paris. And I expect that those meetings will start up again, but they're run by the police.
I've been to one.
Yeah, there you go. So I think that will happen again shortly once we can all start meeting again. But it's when we can start meeting. And I don't know when that's going to be.
Should we move on to the next
Okay,
item?
right.
Yeah.
I think on the point of cannabis, I'm surprised you can't smell it tonight, because normally the playground's full of it at night time. We can get high just sitting on our patio.
It's because you're in here.
Yeah. I just thought it was the parish council meeting giving me a headache. Okay. Right, there's a big long spiel here about the request for a bin near Ashmead Road. The end of the story is you can't have one. Even if you pay for it, the borough say no. They say that they've assessed the situation, they've looked at the amount of rubbish that's distributed in that area, they've used national indicators, etc., etc. So the end of the story is you can't have one. So there we are. I presume they won't empty it.
No, I couldn't access the rest of the PDF. All I could get was the first page too, so I couldn't see what was in it.
Well, I just say it's not much more really. It just simply said Glenn, who was dealing with it's on leave till today, and he was going to send me the outcome. Well, I got the outcome and I did email it out to you, which at the end of the day is no, you can't have one.
The normal criteria is whether or not the additional bin, if it were to be agreed, would be on an existing route, which that must be.
Well, you would think so. But apparently there are guidelines. The Bedford Borough Council uses national indicators N195 surveys to measure cleanliness in areas prior to any decision being made, and in essence, we don't meet that.
We need to know when they're doing their survey, so we can go out there and
Well, I don't know. That's what they do. Just wander down and look, don't they?
Yes, so you can copy into that exchange, please.
Yeah, I'll send you. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, because it's your
Okay. What
I'll
else
send
is...
to Emma Stevens.
Sorry.
I don't know that there's a great deal else on there. Oh, this issue of the sleepers. I think you, Michael, and that's you, Michael and Vince were due to meet. This is on, and who?
We haven't met.
Oh no, you haven't. That's what I was going to say. You're coming up to the wrong time of the year now because it's been wet and damp and slippy and all these things.
That's fine. We can practice.
Okay. I think that's it really,
Right.
isn't it?
Anything else? Anyone else got any comments on those items? If not,
Thank you, Chair.
so just to confirm, the date of the next meeting is the 7th of October, 7:30. Providing we don't go back into any form of lockdown. I don't think we will. So thank you very much for attending. Stephen, thank you for coming on. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chris, for your help at the back there.
Thank you, Chris.